Dave Talks Comics, Episode 20. Dave Talks Comics is a collection of my thoughts, musings, and recollections of comic books that I've read. And I don't have my script in front of me, but I'm looking for it right now. Let's see. Dave Talks Comics can be found on the web at davetalkscomics.com. On Twitter at Dave Talks Comics. Email can be sent to Dave at davetalkscomics.com. On this episode, I'm not going to be talking about comics. I'm going to be talking about Appleseed Comic Con, which was May 17th and 18th, 2014. It's not a spoiler-free podcast, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to be talking about any particular book, so that really doesn't apply here. Anyhow, this episode I'm going to be talking about my trip. First up, I recorded little bits on my drive to the show. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. The show is in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I drove the whole way there by myself. And it's about 600 miles. I took my time getting there and stopped for sit-down meals on both lunch and dinner. I left on Friday, the day before the show began. I knew it was going to take me most of the day to get there. I didn't realize how long with the lengthy meals that I took. But it was about 14 hours, and just short of 14 hours it took me to get there. But I was stopped for about 3 hours and 45 minutes of that. I wasn't actually on the road. So that's the first section. And what I did was I recorded a little bit at each rest stop. And I think I had 7 rest stops between D.C. and Fort Wayne. And then I've got a big section where I talk about the show, especially the first day, because I was there for the entire first day. I left early on the second day, so there's not as much there to talk about, and I didn't have as many thoughts about it. And then you get the same thing, you get my return trip. So there should be timestamps in the show notes indicating when the road trip portion begins, then when my coverage of the con itself begins, then when my second road trip begins, trip back. And then at the end there will be a little bit of wrap up, this little bit that I recorded the day after I got home about just final thoughts on the show and so on and so forth. So sit back. I hope you'll find this enjoyable. If you were there and I met you, I'm sure it was nice to meet you. I mentioned some names further down in the podcast. And if you weren't there, you should have come. It was a great time. And I think I say that somewhere else in the podcast too. Appleseed Con road trip. Stop 1. I'm getting ready, or not stop 1, but I'm getting ready to take off on my trip to Fort Wayne, Indiana for the Appleseed comic book show. I think there's the name's something slightly different than that, but anyway, it's raining here in D.C. Pouring rain overnight. There's a little bit of flooding, and not at my place, but some of the roads aren't in the best of shape. So I'm expecting it's going to take me most of the day to get to. Well, I'm expecting it's going to take me the whole day to get to Fort Wayne. Expecting probably the worst part is going to be right here leaving DC because of the rain and just rush hour traffic. So I've got stops planned along the way every 60 to 80 miles just to get out and stretch my legs, use the bathroom, something like that. I'm not sure I'm going to make every stop, but my first, well, I'll save that for later. So this is kind of crazy. I don't think I've ever driven this far in a single day. I've driven 400 or 500 miles, but this is closer to 600 miles. So we'll see how it goes. It seems a little crazy, especially since I'm going to be turning around and coming back on Sunday. So that's it for the first recording. Appleseed Con Road Trip, Stop 1, Hagerstown, Maryland. I'm at a Sheetz just off of Route 70, just outside of Hagerstown. Needed gas for the car, needed to take a leak. So far, drive's been good. Took me about an hour and 15 minutes to get here. It was a little slow on the Beltway, but it wasn't too bad. Most of the traffic was really getting to the Beltway. Even that wasn't too bad, not as bad as I expected. So far, so good. The rain has stopped. I think I'm going to encounter some more rain somewhere in Ohio, but so far, so good with the trip. I'm listening to the latest episode of Great Expectations. They're talking about Days of Future Past. The episode's about 3 hours long. I think I'm, let's see, how far into it am I? I am an hour. I'm almost 2 hours in, so I got another hour to go. And that'll probably be about the time I'm stopping at my next stop, which is going to be Cumberland, Maryland. So far, so good. And so far, so good. Appleseed Comic-Con road trip, stop number 2, Cumberland, Maryland. Another Sheetz gas station just off of Route 68, Interstate 68. Smooth driving from where was Hagerstown to here, and just finished listening to the latest episode of Great Expectations. Getting ready to get back on the highway, and next stop's going to be Morgantown, West Virginia, where I'm going to have lunch, hopefully at the Mountain State Brewery. Yeah, I'm listening to I started listening to little Brian Lehrer off of WNYC. And this is beautiful country up here, but I'm up in the mountains a bit, and signal's really poor. I tried to check in using Yelp or Foursquare, but I can't seem to do that, so that's going to have to wait. I'm not really surprised. But so far, so good, and it's beautiful weather right now. It's a little overcast, not way overcast, plenty of sunshine, but lots of clouds in the sky, too. So I'm going to try and make my way back onto Interstate 68 and head to Morgantown, which should take me, this part of the trip took me about, I think it was an hour and 2 minutes, 62 minutes. I think the next part should be about the same. Let's see. It's about 72 miles. Yep, 72 miles. The tricky part will be once I get into Morgantown, figuring out exactly how to get to the Mountain State Brewery. Okay, that's it for now. Appleseed Comic-Con road trip, stop number 3, Morgantown, West Virginia. I made it to the Mountain State Brewing Company. Had lunch there. Had a flatbread, which is kind of like a pizza. Wasn't too cheesy. Usually I try to avoid cheese, although I think there was feta on it. Chicken and spinach and stuff like that on it, though. Excuse me. Once again, the drive was nice. It's a little more overcast now, not quite as bright and sunny. I was able to get enough of a signal to check in on Facebook, whatnot. So next stop's going to be near Wheeling, West Virginia, and just another gas station. I think another Sheetz. And I think the direction should be considerably easier to follow. It was a little tricky navigating through Wheeling, but it's lots of twisty, windy roads, but I made my way, and with a little help from my cell phone, which was able to get a signal once I got into into Morgantown, phone worked fine. It was able to help me navigate. So far, so good. I think that's it for now, and I think the idea of making these rest stops about once an hour, once every hour and 15 minutes or so, is a good idea. And let's see, I think it took me an hour and 20 minutes to get from Cumberland to Morgantown, and I've been here for just under 50 minutes now. And so, like I said, next stop near Wheeling, West Virginia, to Sheetz. One more thing, I forgot. I had a beer also. I had a Coal Miner's Daughter Oatmeal Stout at the Mountain State Brewing Company, which is pretty good. Not still doesn't quite reach that level, that standard for a draft stout that the District Chop House has set in my mind, but it was pretty good. It was worth it, definitely. And I paid about, I think, $16 with tip for my meal, which was just a flatbread, a personal size flatbread, which was, 12 inches, I'm not sure, but it was that thick, it was that thin crust, like New York style crust, and for basically a pint, I think the waitress said it was 14 ounces. I can't remember, I think the large was like 20 ounces. I decided that was a little too much for me if I'm going to be driving. I still got about 400 miles to go. Appleseed Con road trip, stop number 4. Okay, so I am just outside of Wheeling, West Virginia. It's about 10 minutes after 3. I'm at another Sheetz gas station, no need for gas. Made another bathroom break and got some water since I'm all out of my own water. So I cut through southwest corner of Pennsylvania, went north from that town I was at, which I can't recall right now. A town by the name of Morgantown, West Virginia, and cut into southwest corner of Pennsylvania, and turned west on 70, north on 79, west on 70, and now I am back in West Virginia just shortly, and soon I'll be in Ohio, and a long drive across Ohio. My next stop is another brewery. It's going to be Weasel Boy Brewing Company in Zanesville, Ohio. I was a little concerned when I took off as to whether they would be open or not, but because they don't open till 4, but considering that it's after 3 o'clock and I've got about 81 miles to go till I get there, I don't think I need to worry about being there before they open. Been on the road. It's been over 6 hours now since I left. I've probably been driving all but an hour and 20 minutes of that, something like that. So, I just finished listening to the latest episode of Girl on Guy, Aisha Tyler's interview program, which is an interview with Paris Barkley, a director whose name I'm not familiar with, but I am familiar with some of the programs and movies he's directed. I think he's directed some movies. I can't remember. Anyway, I just finished listening to that. Not sure what I'm going to... Well, actually, I do know what I'm going to listen to next. I'm going to listen to the rest of the latest episode of Word Balloon, which was that podcasters panel from C2E2. Yeah. Anyway, that does it for now, and I won't be back in West Virginia for a couple days. So next stop, Zanesville, Ohio. Appleseed Con, stop number 5. Zanesville, Ohio, Weasel Boy Brewing Company. I just stopped and got me a brew break. Had a brown stout and then bought a growler of brown stout, which cost me, I think, $17 for the growler. Was it a half pint I had? Something like that. It was only something like $2.75. It was happy hour, so it was $1 off, I think. Something like that. But anyway, so far, the trip from Wheeling, or just east of Wheeling, West Virginia, was good. It's definitely more overcast now, and I still haven't seen any rain. I was expecting to see some rain before I get all the way through Ohio, but of course I'm only about halfway there. I'm almost done with that panel, what's it called? The panel from C2E2, the podcasting panel. And got about 5 minutes to go into that. I also listened to a little bit of Brian Lehrer from WNYC. Good panel. It wasn't really a panel as much as just a bunch of podcasters sitting down and talking about stuff. Anyway, that's about it. I've been here almost 35 minutes now. I think it's about time to move on. I didn't have anything to eat, so my next stop's going to be dinner. And that's going to be just north of Columbus. And I think I'm going to stop at a Greek restaurant that I've picked out. And let's see, how far is that going to be? That is going to be another 70 miles. 69, 70 miles. So that's it for Zanesville, Ohio. Next stop, Columbus. Appleseed road trip, stop number 6. Just north of Columbus. Maybe I'm still actually in Columbus. Just off of Sawmill Road at a place called Anna's Greek Cuisine. Anna's Greek Restaurant? I'm not sure which it is. Just finished having dinner. Excellent meal. I had a chicken gyro, I think it was. And I had some lentil soup, and I had this custard cake type dessert, which I think I've had before in DC at the Big Greek Cafe. All of it was very good. Excellent meal. Not cheap, but reasonably priced, I thought. Let's see. I just have about 150 miles left to go to get to Fort Wayne. I just listened to a podcast, Mike's Amazing World of DC Comics, I think it is. I'm not sure. But it's the first time I've listened to it. I just listened to the most recent episode, which I think is episode 11, in which he talks about some of his old his memories of early memories of reading comic books and how he got into reading comic books. And I thought it was really good. I thought there was a lot of interest and passion in the way he talked about it, and I'm interested in listening to more of his podcasts on the subject of comic books. Other than that, I mean, it was a fairly uneventful drive from Zanesville to Columbus. Fairly straightforward. I thought I would hit a lot of traffic when I got to Columbus, going around Columbus. I wasn't seeing a lot, but there was a lot going the other way around on the Beltway around Columbus. It seemed like all the traffic was going in the opposite direction on 270, I think it is. So I think that's it. I'm listening to a little bit of Kojo Nnamdi now. his Tech Tuesday podcast from earlier this week. And got one more stop before I get to Fort Wayne, and that's somewhere near Lima, Ohio. And then it's going to be straight on to the hotel in Fort Wayne. And so far, I think it's been a great idea, making all these stops, breaking up the trip. It makes it a longer trip. It's been over 10 and a half hours since I left D.C., but probably 2.5 to 3 hours of that I have not been driving, so I'll do the math when I get to the hotel. So that's it for now. Next stop, just outside of Lima, Ohio. Appleseed Con road trip, stop 7. Final stop for the hotel. I'm at a speedway outside of Lima, Ohio. Kind of glad I made it. I was a little nervous I was going to run out of gas along the way. It's raining, the sun has gone down, it's overcast. Got a little turned around at one point, but I managed to find my way thanks to the GPS on my phone. And yeah, that's about it. I'm listening to Pete Holmes right now, You Made It Weird. And he's interviewing some musician who I've never heard of before. That's not that unusual for me. Let's see. I'm not sure how long it took me to get here. Looks like an hour and 31 minutes. Yep, hour and 31 minutes. It was about 87 miles, plus there was a turnaround. I had to stop to check my GPS and all that. So, next stop is Fort Wayne. Next and final stop for this part of the trip is Fort Wayne. Yep. And then I'll check into the hotel and I'll get some sleep. Yeah, I've already had dinner, so I'm good. Cool. That's it for episode 20 of Dave Talks Comics. Questions or comments can be posted on the episode page at davetalkscomics.com or tweet them to Dave Talks Comics. Email your questions or comments to Dave at davetalkscomics.com. Next episode, Day 1 of Appleseed Comic Con 2014.